specifics and detail regarding rates TVA charges to Glasgow, the cost of service study process from TVA, and the rate proposal from the Kentucky Office of the Attorney General. The recap of meeting 2, we reviewed the rate charge by TVA to Glasgow, presentation from my kinds of TVA on the cost of service study process, presentations from Kentucky Office of General Counsel attorneys on the critical peak pricing rate and general thoughts on rate design. We had an industrial perspective from James Gardner, who was the former chairman of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. General agreement by the council that a focus on education for different types of consumers would be pursued, how to save energy during events, and how to save energy in general. A preliminary agreement by the council on recommending a tiered customer charge, and desired expressed for additional time to consider what had been discussed. Given that, we came back for a third meeting where we reviewed examples of theoretical bill impacts from different rate structures under consideration. And then the committee, the advisory group, deliberated on the relative merits of different approaches to making rates more predictable, best method to create a tiered customer charge, variety of education-based initiatives to help promote energy efficiency and a better understanding of rate options for Glasgow customers. And we developed a list of recommendations to be provided back to Glasgow and TVA.
Scout presented the recommendations made by the advisory board to the Electric Plant Board of Directors, and Scout says they accepted all of them, including limiting the number of peak demand days they could predict and modification of EPB's Roundup program, as well as continuing education for the public on energy saving in general. Danny Basil was up next. Basil is a Glasgow attorney that was hired by the council earlier this year to look into the options in regard to removing members of the EPB Board of Directors. Pointed out as the reason for delay in action by Basil on behalf of the council was everyone's desire to wait and see what happened from the advisory council and how their recommendations were received by the EPB board.
One of the issues that was big to the public here, and probably the biggest to the public, was that rate structure. Obviously, neither I nor you know how to set up a rate structure for an electrical utility. As I've studied it, I've learned it's extremely complicated. But one of the things that I did find out from talking with Mr. Ray on the few occasions that we have talked is that alternative rate that's presently available is very close to what our rate was before Infotricity went into effect. It's just that a lot of people haven't used it, but the customer charge is much higher than it was back then. Originally, the customer charge was around $11, and today it's about $22.
Basil also talked about the commingling of funds, which he says created a debt that still exists today. He recommends something be done to deal with that debt. The Little TVA Act requires that revenues from electricity have to go back to lowering rates. He feels the customer charge could be lowered if the $2.4 million could be paid back in one lump sum. Now, when it comes to this co-mingling, TVA, who ultimately regulates the Glasgow Electric Plant Board, had allowed that accounting practice for nearly 30 years, not only at the Glasgow EPB, but other similar municipal-owned utilities. Councilmember Patrick Gaughan said if TVA found no wrongdoing, what authority does the Glasgow City Council have to override a federal agency?
I don't feel equipped as a city councilman, and some people may or may not, overriding a federal agency like TVA if they're good with it. I get why the essence of to try to lower the rates, but I would just say if this was my business, I would pause to say that this group of 12 people are going to regulate better than a federal agency like TVA would regulate. And that's just a statement, and you can comment to that, and then I'll shut up.
Well, I'll comment on it because I think you're inviting me to, and I think I probably should. It wasn't And I have to be very frank to answer what you've mentioned. I was trying to be sure that we didn't have a class action lawsuit filed on behalf of electrical ratepayers saying, I have paid in money that was used for broadband, that was used for cable, and I don't have broadband and cable, and I want my money put back in on the electrical side so that it can be used for rate reductions. That was what I was trying to avoid. That's as succinct as and we weren't worried about TVA filing that suit.
Now, the EPB Board of Directors did not balk on any of those recommendations made by the Advisory Council. Glasgow City Council member Chastity Lowry attended the most recent EPB board meeting.
I do know that we've limited to 4 peak days a month, that's all we can have, and that if they miss it, they miss it. It has to be one of those 4 days. I know the Roundup program was accepted. I know that the education, trying to do a better job of letting people know what was going to happen. I think I remember the board talking about sending out surveys to those people who have signed up for option B to see if they would be interested in time of usage charges. And then he spoke to the issues concerning a tiered customer rate, things regarding billing, the computer software, and also subsidizing different rate groups, if I'm correct, in terms of usage. But I think it was one of those meetings I walked out of, I can't speak for the others who were there, and felt positive that some compromise had been made, and to limit those 4 peak days where nobody has to have 8 or 9 peak days a month for those who have stayed on that rate was a step in the right direction.
Basil had drafted a letter that included all the issues he felt should be addressed, and Councilmember Marna Kirkpatrick made the motion for Basil to go ahead and send the letter to the EPB board. Basil said that once the letter is received, the board and the council can either reach a compromise or they can move forward and schedule a hearing. Councilmember Brad Gross voted against moving forward with the letter, along with members Patrick Gaunce and Chastity Lowry. Gross said that none of the council members were experts.
The Lord was trying to make a positive move in the right direction, and I don't believe any of us up here are experts on the rate structure. I sure don't claim to be, and I've been to quite a few board meetings, and I'm sure there's members of this council that's not even been to a board meeting, much less talk to a board member, and they're going to make a vote tonight on whether to send this letter or not, which, like I said, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I don't think the students are, so.
Now, when it comes to Kirkpatrick's second motion to schedule a hearing before the council with the EPB board, members began speaking up in opposition. As the noes began to become apparent, council member Gary Oliver voted to table the motion entirely. Now, the letter will be delivered to Bowling Green attorney Thomas Cole, who represents the EPB board, and the council will also have to wait for their response. I'm Angela Briggs with WCLU, and this has been your top story at 7.
A hometown experience
at Air Care.
A novel idea, not at Bailey Gibson. We